Lila's hands had gone numb in the washing water an hour ago. She kept scrubbing anyway, her fingers moving through the motions, even as feeling fled entirely. The basin before her held the remnants of the evening feast, grease and fat congealed in water that had long since lost any trace of warmth. Around her, the kitchen staff moved through their final tasks of the night. Most had already retreated to their quarters in the servants' wing, desperate for whatever heat their thin blankets might provide. Winter had settled over Valdemar like a curse, stealing warmth and mercy in equal measure. Margot's voice cut through the quiet. "Still at it, are you?" Lila didn't look up. She knew better. Almost finished. The head cook moved closer, her bulk casting shadows across the washing basin. At 45, Margot ruled the castle kitchens with iron discipline and casual cruelty. She seemed to take particular pleasure in finding fault with Lila's work, no matter how thoroughly it was done. "Almost isn't finished." Margot's thick fingers grabbed a platter from the drying rack, examined it with theatrical care, then dropped it back into the filthy water with a splash that soaked Lila's already damp sleeves. Again. And this time, try not to leave half the grease behind. Lila's jaw tightened, but she pulled the platter from the water without argument. "Yes, ma'am." Margot lingered a moment longer, as if hoping for protest. When none came, she made a disgusted sound and turned toward the hallway that led to the senior staff quarters. Her footsteps faded, leaving Lila alone with the sound of water dripping from her elbows. She finished the platter, then the others Margot had rejected. By the time she finally dried her hands on a cloth that was more holes than fabric, the kitchen fires had burned down to embers. The stone floors seemed to radiate cold now that there was no heat to push it back. Lila's own quarters were in the attic of the servants' wing, accessed by a narrow staircase that creaked with every step. The room barely deserved the name. It had space for a straw mattress, a single blanket that Lila had patched so many times. The original fabric was more memory than reality, and nothing else. No window, no fireplace. No warmth beyond what her own body could generate beneath that threadbare blanket. She was halfway up the stairs when she heard it. Quick pause. If paranormal romance with heart is your thing, subscribe to Moonlight Novels and drop a like. New stories every day. Now let's get back to that freezing kitchen and the choice that will change everything. A sound so faint she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. A whimper, thin and broken, coming from somewhere below. Not from the kitchen, but deeper. From the direction of the old storage cellars that no one had used in years. Lila stopped, one hand on the cold stone wall. She should ignore it. Should climb the rest of these stairs and collapse onto her mattress and let whatever was crying down there sort itself out. But her feet were already turning around, carrying her back down before her mind had fully agreed to the decision. The entrance to the lower cellars was through a door behind the main pantry, half hidden by sacks of winter grain. Lila had to shove them aside to reach the handle. The door opened with a groan of protest, revealing stairs that descended into absolute darkness. The whimpering came again, clearer now, definitely from below. Lila grabbed a candle from the kitchen, lit it from the dying coals, and started down. The air grew colder with each step, and something else changed too. A smell reached her, copper sharp and wrong. Blood. Fresh enough that she could taste the iron of it at the back of her throat. The cellar opened into a space that had once stored wine and preserved goods. Now it held mostly forgotten furniture and crates whose contents no one remembered. The candlelight pushed back the darkness just enough to show her the shape huddled in the far corner. A wolf pup. Small, probably only days old, with fur that would have been pure black if not for the blood matting it in dark clumps. Deep gouges ran along its side, the work of claws. Adult claws. Lila's breath caught. Shifters didn't abandon pups. Ever. The bond between pack and young was absolute, sacred. For a pup this small to be alone, bleeding, dying in a forgotten cellar meant something terrible had happened. She set the candle down and approached slowly, making soft sounds that she hoped were soothing. The pup's eyes cracked open, too bright in the darkness, and it made a sound that was part whimper, part growl, afraid but trying to be brave. "I know," Lila whispered, kneeling beside it. "I know you're scared." She reached out carefully, letting the pup smell her hand first. After a moment, it stopped growling. Up close, she could see how badly hurt it was. The wounds were deep, and infection had already started to set in. Without help, this pup would be dead by morning. Her omega instincts surged forward, overwhelming every rational thought. This was wrong, unnatural. A pup this young should be warm and fed and protected by its pack. Instead, it was here, alone, dying. Lila made her decision. She pulled off the apron she still wore, wrapping the pup as gently as she could. It whined at the movement, but didn't fight her. She tucked the bundle against her chest and stood. Getting back up those stairs was harder with her hands full, but she managed. The kitchen was still empty, the fires still dead. The meat stores were locked, of course. Everything valuable was locked at night. But Lila had worked here for years, and she knew which hinges were loose, which locks could be worked with patient effort. It took precious minutes she didn't have, but eventually the pantry door gave way. Inside hung cuts of meat destined for tomorrow's royal banquet, venison, specifically requested by the Alpha King himself. Lila's hands shook as she cut a portion free. This was theft. Not just any theft, but stealing from the king's own table. The punishment for such a crime was severe, but when she looked down at the pup in her apron, at its labored breathing and the blood seeping through the fabric, she couldn't bring herself to care about punishment. She climbed the attic stairs with her stolen goods and her dying charge. Her room was cold and dark and barely large enough for one, but she laid the pup on her mattress anyway. Used her one blanket to make a nest, tore the raw meat into pieces small enough for a pup to manage. At first, it wouldn't eat. Too weak, too far gone. Lila had to rub tiny bits of meat against its muzzle, coaxing it to open its mouth, to taste, to swallow. Eventually, instinct took over. The pup ate 3 small pieces before exhaustion claimed it again. Lila sat on the cold floor beside her mattress and watched it sleep. She should clean the wounds, but she had no supplies, no knowledge of healing. All she could do was keep it warm, keep it fed, and hope that was sufficient. Outside her door, the castle slept on, unaware. The next morning, Margot noticed the missing venison immediately. "Someone," she announced to the assembled kitchen staff, her voice sharp with fury, "has stolen from the king's stores. The cut I had prepared specifically for tonight's feast is gone." Lila kept her eyes on the vegetables she was chopping. Her movement stayed steady, despite the panic climbing her throat. Margot's gaze swept the room. "When I find out who did this, they'll hang. Mark my words. Theft from the royal table is treason." The morning dragged past. Lila worked through her assigned tasks, hyper-aware of every glance that came her way, every whispered conversation between other servants. At midday, she managed to slip away long enough to climb to her room. The pup was awake, eyes brighter than they'd been the night before. It had managed to stand, though its legs trembled with the effort. She fed it more stolen meat, this time from the general stores rather than the royal pantry. Smaller risk, though still dangerous. The pup ate with more energy, and when it finished, it made a sound that might have been contentment. That afternoon, it tried to shift. Lila watched as the pup's small body shuddered, bones beginning to crack and reform. But the transformation stalled halfway, and the pup collapsed with a yelp of pain. It tried twice more before giving up, panting and whining. Something was wrong. Pups could shift from birth, but this one couldn't complete the change. By the 3rd day, the pup had recovered enough to move around her small room. Its wounds were closing, though infection still reddened the edges. It needed real healing, supplies and knowledge Lila didn't have access to. But at least it was alive. At least she'd saved it from dying alone in that cellar. She should have known her luck wouldn't hold. That evening, as the kitchen prepared for the nightly meal, Margot made her announcement. "There's a thief among us, someone who thinks they can take what doesn't belong to them without consequence." Her eyes swept the room, landing on each servant in turn. "I'm ordering a search of all servants' quarters, tonight, starting now." Panic seized Lila's chest. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Around her, servants began protesting the invasion of privacy, but Margot silenced them with a raised hand. The king himself has authorized this. Anyone who refuses the search will be assumed guilty. Guards appeared in the doorway, already prepared to carry out the order. Lila's mind raced, searching desperately for options she didn't have. There was nowhere to hide the pup. No excuse that would explain its presence. No story she could tell that wouldn't end with her arrest. The guards started with the servants' hall on the ground floor, working their way up systematically. Lila continued chopping vegetables because stopping would draw attention, but her hands had started to shake badly enough that she nearly cut herself. It took less than an hour for the guards to reach the attic. She heard boots on the stairs, heavy and certain. Heard her door crash open. Then a shout, "Found something!" Margot's smile was vicious as she watched two guards drag Lila from the kitchen. A third followed, carrying a bundle wrapped in her blanket. The pup inside made a sound of distress, and Lila's instincts screamed to go to it, to protect it, even as the guard's grip on her arms held her immobile. "The venison was just the beginning, I'd wager," Margot said. "Let's see what else this little thief has been hiding." They pulled Lila through corridors she'd never walked before, past tapestries and carved doors, up stone stairs that led to the heart of the castle proper. Other servants they passed stopped to stare. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked horrified. The great hall was massive, all stone and firelight and vaulted ceilings that seemed to reach toward the sky itself. At the far end, elevated on a dais, sat a throne of dark wood carved with wolves in eternal hunt. And on that throne sat the Alpha King. Julian was everything the stories said. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell to his shoulders and a beard that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. His eyes were blue, the pale shade of winter ice, and when they fixed on Lila, she felt the full weight of his authority pressing down. The guards forced her to her knees on the stone floor. The third guard approached the throne, still carrying the blanket bundle. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing the pup inside. The creature looked around with wide eyes, frightened by the space and the strangers. It whined, a sound that carried in the sudden silence of the hall. Margot stepped forward from where she'd followed the procession. "Your Majesty, I present the thief who has been stealing from your stores. This Omega servant, Lila, was found harboring a wolf pup in her quarters. She stole from your table to feed it." Julian hadn't moved. His gaze remained fixed on Lila, expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that everyone in the hall strained to hear it. "You stole from me." It wasn't a question. Lila swallowed hard, throat dry. "Yes, Your Majesty. To feed a pup." "Yes." "Why?" The question surprised her. She looked up despite knowing she shouldn't meet his eyes. "Because it was dying. Because someone had hurt it and left it alone. Because I couldn't just let it die." Something flickered across Julian's face, too quick to name. He rose from his throne, and every guard in the hall tensed. The Alpha King stood 6.5 feet tall, and when he moved, it was with the controlled grace of someone who understood exactly what violence his body could deliver. He descended the dais steps slowly. His boots echoed against stone. When he reached the guard holding the pup, he stopped. "Let me see it." The guard obeyed immediately, holding out the bundle. Julian took it with hands that Lila suddenly realized were shaking. He pulled back the blanket, looked down at the small face peering up at him. Then his knees gave out. The Alpha King of Valdmere fell to the stone floor. The pup cradled against his chest, and the sound that tore from his throat was something between a sob and a roar. His whole body shook. His free hand reached for the pup's ear, pulling it gently aside to reveal something behind it. When he spoke again, his voice broke on the word. "My son!" Chaos erupted in the great hall. Nobles who had been watching the proceedings from their seats along the walls rose in a wave of shocked voices. Guards moved forward uncertainly, unsure whether to restrain their king or protect him. Somewhere in the noise, a woman screamed. Julian didn't seem to hear any of it. He stayed on his knees on the cold stone, the pup pressed against his chest, his face buried against the small black head. His shoulders shook with the force of his breathing. "Everyone out." The words came from Tobias, the captain of the guard, whose voice cut through the disorder. "Clear the hall, now." The guards moved immediately, herding nobles toward the exits. Margot opened her mouth to protest, but one look from Tobias silenced her. She left with the others, though her expression promised this wasn't over. Within minutes, the vast space had emptied to 5 people. Julian, still on the floor with the pup. Tobias, standing guard at the main doors. An elderly woman in healer's robes who must have been summoned during the chaos. And Lila, still kneeling where the guards had left her, hands numb from how tightly they'd gripped her arms. Julian finally looked up. His eyes were red, his face carved with something that looked like it might break him apart. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. "Ingrid." The healer approached slowly, her steps careful. She had to be past 60, with silver hair bound in a braid and hands that trembled slightly. "Your Majesty, explain to me how my son, who you told me died 2 years ago, is alive in my arms right now." The silence that followed was absolute. Lila watched the healer's face drain of color, watched her hands twist together. "I can explain," Ingrid began, but Julian cut her off. "Then do it, quickly. Before I forget, you've served this castle for 40 years and have your throat torn out right here." The threat wasn't empty. Lila could smell the rage coming off the Alpha King in waves, sharp and hot and barely controlled. The pup in his arms whined, responding to the emotion, and Julian's grip gentled immediately. Ingrid took a shaking breath. "Lady Severin came to me 3 months before the Queen went into labor. She offered me a sum of gold that would have let me retire comfortably for the rest of my life. All I had to do was one thing." "What thing?" "Declare the baby dead. No matter what happened during the birth, no matter if the child was healthy or sick or perfectly formed, I was to tell you it was stillborn." Ingrid's voice cracked. "She said there could be no heir from your first marriage, that she needed to be the one to give you your successor." Julian's hand moved to the pup's ear, pulling it gently aside to reveal the small mark Lila had seen him check earlier. A crescent moon, pale against black fur. His thumb traced it with a touch that was infinitely gentle. "Keep talking." "The labor was difficult. The Queen was weakening, and I knew we were going to lose her. But when the baby came, he was breathing, barely but alive. So small, so weak. I didn't think he'd survive the hour even with the best care." Ingrid's eyes were wet now. "I told you he was dead. Told everyone. And when the confusion of the Queen's death had everyone distracted, I took him, wrapped him in cloth, and carried him out through the servants' passages." "Where did you take him?" "The Ancients' Forest, the deep part, where no one goes anymore. Lady Severin told me to leave him there. She said nature would take its course, and there would be no evidence of what I'd done." Lila's stomach turned. The Ancients' Forest was dangerous, full of predators and old magic that people avoided. To leave a newborn, there was to guarantee its death. Julian stood slowly, the pup still cradled against him. When he looked at Ingrid, his eyes held something colder than rage. "You took my son, my heir, and left him in the forest to die, for gold. I'm sorry." The words were useless, and Ingrid seemed to know it. "I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I've regretted it every day since." "Your regret means nothing." Julian turned to Tobias. "Take her to the cells. High security. Post 6 guards. She awaits formal trial." Tobias moved immediately, taking Ingrid by the arm. The healer didn't resist as she was led away, her head bowed. The heavy doors closed behind them, leaving Julian alone with Lila and the pup. The Alpha King stood in the center of his empty hall, holding his son, and for a long moment he simply breathed. Then his attention shifted to Lila, still kneeling on the stone. "Stand up." She obeyed on legs that felt uncertain. Her whole body ached from fear and cold, and kneeling on unforgiving stone. "You found him." Julian's voice had lost some of its edge, though it remained rough, in the cellar below the kitchens. "Yes, Your Majesty." "How long ago?" 3 days. "And you stole food to feed him?" "Yes." "Why?" The question came quieter this time. "You're Omega. You had no way of knowing whose pup this was. For all you knew, it could have been feral, dangerous. Why risk everything for it?" Lila searched for words that would explain the urgency that had seized her in that cellar, the absolute certainty that she couldn't walk away. I just knew he needed me. My instincts wouldn't let me leave him there to die. It wasn't even really a choice. Something shifted in Julian's expression. He looked down at the pup in his arms, then back at her. Come here. She approached carefully, stopping a few feet away. Up close, she could see the wetness on the Alpha King's face, the way his jaw stayed clenched against emotion. Hold out your hands. Lila obeyed, and Julian carefully transferred the pup into her arms. The moment she took his weight, the small creature made a sound of recognition. His nose pressed against her throat, and he settled immediately, the tension leaving his body. Julian watched this with an expression Lila couldn't read. He knows you, trusts you. I've been the only one with him since I found him. 3 days of care from a stranger, and he acts like you're his mother. Julian's voice held something that might have been wonder. That shouldn't be possible. The main doors opened again. Tobias returned, followed by 3 people in healer's robes. Not Ingrid, but younger healers Lila vaguely recognized from seeing them around the castle. Your Majesty. The lead healer, a woman with brown hair streaked with silver, bowed. You summoned us? I need you to examine my son. Tell me everything. Why he's still a pup, why he can't shift, what condition he's in. The healers set to work immediately, spreading cloths on the floor and gesturing for Lila to lay the pup down. She did so reluctantly, and the creature whined as she pulled away. The lead healer ran her hands over him, murmuring to herself. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, she sat back. Your Majesty, I need to ask something that might sound strange. Where exactly was he found? The storage cellar beneath the kitchens, Julian said. But according to Ingrid's confession, he was originally abandoned in the Ancient's forest. The healer's eyes widened. The deep forest? Past the old boundary stones? I assume so. Why? Because there's old magic on this pup. Very old. The kind that comes from protective enchantments. She gestured to her colleagues, who were passing their hands over the pup and nodding agreement. If he was left in the forest where I think he would have fallen under the widow's blessing. The what? Tobias asked. A century ago, there was a witch who lived deep in the Ancient's forest. She lost her own child to abandonment and devoted the rest of her life to protecting others who suffered the same fate. When she died, her magic remained in that territory. Any pup abandoned there enters a state of magical stasis until someone with a pure heart comes to claim them. Lila's chest tightened. The healer was looking at her now. The magic keeps them alive, but frozen in time, the woman continued. He would have experienced 2 years chronologically, but his body only aged weeks. The stasis preserves them, but at a cost. They can't shift, can't develop normally, until the magic is broken by the right person, forming a genuine bond with them. Julian's hands had curled into fists. Lady Severin didn't know about this protection. Most people don't. The widow's territory isn't marked, and the stories are old. She probably assumed he would simply die of exposure. The healer turned back to the pup, who was trying to crawl toward Lila. But he survived, and someone found him. This Omega servant, Julian gestured to Lila. She's been caring for him for 3 days. The lead healer studied Lila with new interest. Then she's the one who started breaking the stasis. The bond is already forming. Without her continued care, the magic might reassert itself, and we'd lose him again. Without that bond, the blessing doesn't release cleanly. It loosens in bursts. Some days, his body will catch up faster than it should, and other days, he'll seem unchanged. It's why the shift often comes last. The magic resists letting go of what it was built to protect. The words hung in the air. Lila felt the weight of every eye in the room turned to her. Julian spoke slowly, as if testing each word. You're saying my son needs her specifically, that she's the only one who can keep him alive, not forever. Once the stasis is fully broken and he resumes normal development, he'll be fine. But that could take weeks or even months of constant care. The bond needs to be reinforced daily, hourly even. The healer met Julian's gaze squarely. Whoever this woman is, Your Majesty, she's not just a servant anymore. She's the only thing standing between your son and death. The apartments Julian gave her were larger than the entire servant's wing. 3 rooms connected by carved doorways, with a bed that could have held 4 people, thick rugs that silenced footsteps, and windows that actually let in light. A fireplace sat against one wall, already stocked with wood and burning steadily. Lila stood in the center of the main room and tried to understand that this was real. "The adjoining chamber is the nursery," Julian said from the doorway. He still held Owen, who had fallen asleep against his chest. "I'll have it properly furnished by tomorrow, but for tonight, he can stay in here with you." "Your Majesty, I don't understand." Lila's voice came out small. "I'm just a kitchen servant." "You were a kitchen servant." Julian crossed to the bed and laid Owen down carefully, surrounding him with pillows so he couldn't roll off. "Now you're the person keeping my son alive. That changes everything." He straightened, and for the first time since the Great Hall, Lila saw how exhausted he looked. Lines creased the corners of his eyes, and his shoulders carried a weight that seemed ready to crush him. "I don't know how to be anything else," she admitted. "Then learn." The words came out harsher than he probably meant, because his expression softened immediately. "I'm sorry. It's been a difficult day." That felt like an understatement, large enough to be insulting. Lila almost laughed, but the sound died in her throat when she met his eyes. The grief there was so raw it hurt to witness. "Your son is alive," she said instead. "That's not nothing." Something in Julian's face cracked. He turned away quickly, but not before she saw his hand come up to cover his mouth. His shoulders shook once, then went rigid as he forced control back. Lila stayed where she was. She didn't know this man, didn't know if he'd welcome comfort or punish her for presuming to offer it. So she just waited while he breathed through whatever was trying to break him. When he spoke again, his voice was steady. "There will be servants assigned to you. A lady's maid, someone to help with Owen, guards outside your door. They answer to you now." "I don't need guards." "You do." Julian turned back to face her. "Every noble in this castle just watched me fall to my knees in that hall. They know my heir is alive, and they know you're the one who saved him. That makes you valuable. And valuable things need protection." The next 6 weeks taught Lila that Julian had been right about needing protection, though not in the way she'd expected. The nobles didn't try to harm her. They simply pretended she didn't exist. When she passed them in corridors, their eyes slid away as if she were furniture. At meals, which she was now expected to take in the Great Hall rather than the kitchens, servants placed her at a table so far from the dais that she might as well have been eating in another building. The whispers were constant. She caught fragments as she moved through the castle. "Jumped-up servant. Thinks she's special now. Give it a month and he'll remember what she is." Her former colleagues in the kitchens were worse. The few times she ventured down there, hoping for familiar faces, she found only resentment. They saw her fine clothes, her clean hands, and decided she'd become something they hated. Only Owen made it bearable. The pup transformed week by week. The magical stasis broke slowly, and as it did, his development accelerated to catch up with his chronological age. By the end of the first week, he could walk steadily. By the second, he was trying to climb furniture. His wounds healed without scarring, and his coat grew glossy with proper nutrition. He also developed a personality that Lila found both delightful and exhausting. Owen was curious about everything. He investigated every corner of their apartments, stuck his nose into things that weren't meant for small pups, and regularly gave Lila heart attacks by attempting to climb things he absolutely should not climb. He was also fiercely protective. When a servant came too close to Lila with what Owen perceived as hostile intent, he positioned himself between them and growled warnings that would have been more impressive if he'd been larger than a house cat. Julian spent hours each day in their apartments. He'd arrive after breakfast and stay until Owen fell asleep for his afternoon nap. Sometimes he just watched his son play. Other times, he'd get down on the floor and let Owen climb all over him, patient with sharp puppy claws and enthusiastic licks. Lila watched these interactions from across the room, seeing the grief work its way through the Alpha King's features. He was careful with Owen, gentle in a way that suggested he feared the pup might disappear if he held too tight. But sometimes his eyes would go distant, and she knew he was thinking about the 2 years he'd lost. They didn't speak much at first. Lila wasn't sure what to say to a king, and Julian seemed content with silence. But But gradually, as days became weeks, that changed. It started on the 12th night. Lila woke to find Owen whimpering in his sleep, small body twitching with nightmare distress. She gathered him up, murmuring soft reassurances, and carried him to the chair by the fireplace. The motion woke him fully, and he burrowed against her neck with small sounds of distress. "Bad dream," she whispered, stroking the soft fur of his head. "You're safe. I've got you." The connecting door to Julian's chambers opened. The Alpha King stood there in sleeping clothes, hair loose around his shoulders, expression alert. "Is he hurt?" "Just a nightmare." Julian crossed the room and settled into the opposite chair without asking permission. In the firelight, he looked younger somehow, more human, less the terrifying authority figure from the throne. They sat in silence while Owen calmed, his breathing evening out. Lila thought Julian might leave once the pup fell back asleep, but he stayed, staring into the flames. "I wasn't here when he was born," Julian said suddenly. There was an uprising in the northern territories, raiders from beyond the border, burning villages. I left to deal with it personally. Lila didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. My wife begged me to stay. She was frightened, said something felt wrong about the pregnancy. But I told her everything would be fine. That Ingrid was the best healer in the kingdom. His hands gripped the chair arms. I was 3 days' ride away when word reached me. By the time I got back, they were both gone. Or so I thought. You couldn't have known what Ingrid would do. Couldn't I? Julian's laugh held no humor. I'm the Alpha King. I'm supposed to know everything that happens in my kingdom. Supposed to protect my people, my family. Instead, my own healer betrayed me, and I didn't see it coming. Owen made a small sound in his sleep, and both of them went quiet, waiting to see if he'd wake. When he settled again, Julian continued more softly. I blamed myself for my wife's death. Thought if I'd been here, maybe I could have saved her. For 2 years, that guilt has been eating me alive. He looked at Owen, and something in his expression made Lila's chest ache. Now I find out my son was alive this whole time, that he was alone and afraid and nearly died because I wasn't there to protect him. How do I live with that? By being here now, Lila said. By making sure he knows you'll never leave him again. Julian's eyes met hers across the space between chairs. In that moment, she saw not the Alpha King, but just a man trying to hold together pieces of himself that didn't quite fit anymore. After that night, their conversations became regular. Julian would come after Owen's evening meal and stay until late, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about the kingdom's politics, the complicated web of alliances that kept Valdemir strong. She told him about growing up in the kitchens, about the isolation of being Omega in a world that saw her designation as lesser. I never knew my parents, she admitted one night. I was found as an infant, left at the castle gates. Paula, one of the senior servants, raised me. She died when I was 14, and after that, I was just another orphan working off her debt. You felt invisible, Julian observed. I was invisible. Lila looked down at Owen, who was sprawled across her lap in complete trust. Until I found him. For the first time in my life, I mattered to someone. Julian's expression shifted into something she couldn't name. You matter. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. The 4th week brought crisis. Owen woke screaming, his small body burning with fever. Lila felt the heat of him against her hands, and her heart stopped. She grabbed him and ran for Julian's door, pounding on it until it flew open. Something's wrong, she gasped. Julian took one look at Owen and shouted for healers. Within minutes, their apartments filled with people. The lead healer from before examined Owen while Lila hovered nearby, unable to stay still. The stasis magic is fighting the breaking process, the healer explained. His body is trying to resume normal development, but the enchantment hasn't fully released him. It's causing his system to reject itself. Fix it, Julian commanded, his voice flat with barely controlled terror. We're trying, Your Majesty, but this is old magic. All we can do is keep him cool and wait for it to resolve. The next 3 days blurred together. Lila refused to leave Owen's side, maintaining cold compresses on his small body, forcing water between his lips when he was conscious enough to swallow. She didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him dying in that cellar again, and she couldn't let that happen twice. Julian stayed with them. He took over when Lila's hands shook too badly to refresh the compresses. He sent for every healer in the kingdom who might know something about breaking old enchantments. He barely left the room. On the third night, Lila's vision started going dark at the edges. She was replacing Owen's compress when the floor tilted sideways. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," Julian's voice said from very far away. She tried to protest, to tell him she needed to stay with Owen, but her body had other ideas. The world went black. When Lila woke, soft sheets surrounded her and daylight streamed through windows. She sat up too fast, panic flooding her veins. "Owen!" "Sleeping." Julian's voice came from beside the bed. "The fever broke 6 hours ago. He's going to be fine." Lila turned to find the Alpha King sitting in a chair pulled up next to her bed, Owen's small form cradled in his arms. The pup was indeed sleeping, his breathing even and unlabored. Relief hit her so hard she almost started crying. "You collapsed from exhaustion," Julian said quietly. "I had to carry you to bed. You've been asleep for 14 hours. I'm sorry, you should have taken care of yourself." There was no anger in his voice, just something that sounded almost like concern. "He needs you alive, Lila, not worked to death." The use of her name, not a title or generic address, made something in her chest flutter. She looked at Julian properly for the first time since waking. He looked as exhausted as she felt, with dark circles under his eyes and a shadow of beard growth that suggested he hadn't bothered with grooming. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. An acknowledgement of what the past 3 days had revealed. He'd been as terrified as she was, had stayed by her side through every moment of that fear. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being here. Where else would I be?" The question came out rough. "This is my son. And you." He stopped, seemed to reconsider whatever he'd been about to say. "You've given me everything. The least I can do is be here when you need me." The air between them felt charged with something Lila didn't have a name for. She became acutely aware that she was in bed, in her nightgown, with Julian sitting close enough to touch. Aware of how his eyes had gone soft when he looked at her. Aware of her own pulse picking up speed. Owen chose that moment to wake up. He made a small sound and immediately looked around until his gaze found Lila. Then he wiggled in Julian's arms, clearly wanting to go to her. Julian stood and settled the pup on the bed beside Lila. Owen immediately pressed his small body against her side and sighed with contentment. She ran her hand over his head, feeling the normal temperature of his fur, and finally let herself believe he was truly recovering. "The healers said the worst is over," Julian said. He stayed standing, but he didn't move away. His development should progress normally from here, another month or two, and he should be able to shift to human form. Good. Lila kept petting Owen, needing the reassurance of his solid warmth. That's good. Julian reached out, and for a heartbeat, Lila thought he was going to touch her face. But his hand diverted to Owen instead, stroking the pup's back in a mirror of her own gesture. His fingers brushed hers in the process, and the contact sent electricity up her arm. Neither of them pulled away. "I should let you rest," Julian said, though he made no move to leave. "Both of you need proper sleep." "Will you stay?" The words came out before Lila could stop them. "Just until we fall asleep. Please." Julian's expression went through several changes before settling on something that looked almost like relief. "Yes, I'll stay." He settled back into his chair, close enough that Lila could have reached out and touched him if she'd been brave enough. She wasn't. Not yet. But as she drifted back to sleep with Owen warm against her side and Julian's presence a solid comfort nearby, she thought, maybe someday she would be. Outside their apartments, the castle continued its daily business. Nobles schemed their political games. Servants whispered their gossip. And 5 stories below, in the kitchens, Margot learned that her cruelty had finally been noticed. Julian had Tobias investigate quietly, talking to servants who'd worked with Lila. The stories they told painted a picture of systematic abuse. Margot hadn't just been harsh, she'd been deliberately cruel, singling Lila out for punishment and humiliation. 2 days after Owen's fever broke, Margot was summoned to the Great Hall. The entire kitchen staff was required to attend. Julian had her crimes read aloud in front of everyone she'd lorded over. Then he stripped her of her position and assigned her to the worst job in the castle, cleaning the latrines. "You will apologize to Lila," he commanded, "on your knees, in front of everyone who witnessed your cruelty." Margot's face went purple with rage and humiliation, but she obeyed, because refusing would have meant exile, and even latrines were better than being cast out to die alone. Lila watched from her place at the high table where Julian had insisted she sit, watched Margot kneel before her, heard the forced apology, and felt nothing but pity for a woman who'd spent so many years making others small to feel big herself. "I accept your apology," Lila said quietly. "Now get up. Your work awaits." As Margot left, head bowed in defeat, Lila felt Julian's hand briefly touch hers under the table. A small gesture of support that meant more than he probably realized. Things were changing. Lila could feel it in every interaction, every look that passed between her and the Alpha King. Something was building between them, inevitable as sunrise. She just hoped they'd both survive whatever came next. The transformation happened on a morning that started like any other. Lila was brushing her hair by the window when she heard Owen make a sound she'd never heard before. Not a whimper or a growl, but something closer to a grunt of effort. She turned to find the pup's body shimmering, bones beginning their familiar attempt to shift. This time, the change didn't stall. Owen's small form rippled and reformed, fur receding into pale skin, limbs lengthening and reshaping. The process took less than a minute, and when it finished, a small boy stood where the pup had been. He was naked, of course, with black hair that stuck up in all directions and blue eyes that were achingly familiar. For a moment, he just stood there, wobbling on unsteady legs. Then he looked down at his hands, turned them over, and made a sound of wonder. "Hands," he said, the word slurred but recognizable. Lila's breath caught. She crossed the room and knelt beside him, pulling a blanket around his small body. "Owen, you shifted." The boy's face split into a grin. He reached for her with those new hands, wrapping small arms around her neck. "Mama," he said clearly. "Mama, Mama." Something in Lila's chest cracked open. She held him close, feeling tears she couldn't explain running down her face. "Yes, sweet one. I'm here." The door connecting to Julian's chambers opened. The Alpha King stood there, already dressed for the day, and froze when he saw them. His son, in human form for the first time. Calling Lila Mama. Owen turned at the sound and his eyes went wide. "Papa!" He wiggled out of Lila's arms and ran across the room on unsteady feet, crashing into Julian's legs with enough force to make the Alpha King stumble. Julian caught him, lifting the boy up, and his face did something complicated. "You shifted!" Julian's voice came out rough. "Owen, you shifted." "Big now," Owen announced proudly, "like Papa." Julian pressed his face against his son's hair, and his shoulders shook. Lila looked away, giving him privacy for whatever emotion was working through him. When he spoke again, his voice was steadier. "We need to have the healers examine him, make sure the shift was complete and clean." The healers confirmed what they'd hoped. Owen's development had finally caught up with his chronological age. He was, for all intents and purposes, a healthy 2-year-old who happened to be able to shift between human and wolf form. The magical stasis had released its hold completely. Julian declared a feast to celebrate his son's recovery. The entire castle would participate, nobles and servants alike. It would be a statement, Lila realized, a public acknowledgement that the heir to Valdemir lived. The feast took place 3 days later in the Great Hall, which had been decorated with winter greenery and hundreds of candles. Long tables filled the space, arranged by rank and station. The high table on the dais held Julian and his closest advisors. Lila had assumed she'd sit there as well, given that she'd been taking meals with Julian privately for weeks now. But when she entered the hall, a servant directed her to a table near the back wall, far from the dais. Surrounded by other servants who'd been elevated slightly above their original stations but remained firmly below noble status. She understood immediately. This was deliberate. Someone wanted to remind her exactly where she belonged. Lady Severin sat at the high table, 3 seats from Julian. She was beautiful in the calculated way of noble women who understood their appearance as political weapon. Dark hair arranged in elaborate braids, a dress that cost more than most servants earned in a year, posture that radiated breeding and confidence. When Severin's eyes found Lila across the crowded hall, her smile was cold. The feast itself was magnificent. Course after course of rich food, wine flowing freely, musicians playing in the corner. Owen sat on Julian's lap at the high table, dressed in fine clothes and clearly delighted by all the attention. Every time he laughed, Julian's face softened in a way that made him look years younger. Lila picked at her food and tried not to feel the weight of stares from nobles who were definitely discussing her. She caught fragments of conversation from nearby tables. Thinks she's special because she found a lost pup. I heard she used dark magic to create the bond. How else would an Omega command such attention? Give it time. He'll remember what she is soon enough. The words stung, but Lila kept her expression neutral. She'd spent years enduring Margot's cruelty. She could handle noble gossip. What she couldn't handle was the way Severin kept looking at her. Not with contempt, but with something sharper. Calculation. Like Lila was a problem that needed solving. The feast ended late, with half the attendees drunk and the other half well on their way. Lila escaped as soon as propriety allowed, climbing the stairs to her apartments with relief. Owen would sleep in Julian's chambers tonight, giving the two of them time together, which meant Lila had the evening to herself. She was pouring wine from the decanter that had been left in her room when someone knocked. One of the younger servants entered, a girl named Claire who'd been kind to Lila even after her elevation in status. "My lady, I brought your evening refreshment." Claire set down a tray with bread, cheese, and a fresh decanter of wine. "Thought you might want something after that ordeal." "Thank you." Lila smiled at her. The feast was exhausting. "I can imagine, all those nobles staring." Claire hesitated. "My lady, be careful. Lady Severin has been asking questions about you. About your background, your history, whether you have any training in magic. Why would she care?" "I don't know, but she's been very persistent." Claire glanced at the door nervously. "Just be careful what you eat and drink. Not everything in this castle is safe." The warning settled cold in Lila's stomach. She thanked Claire and locked the door after the girl left. Then she looked at the wine she'd already poured. Probably paranoid, but Claire's warning had been genuine. Lila was about to dump the wine when Owen burst through the connecting door, still in human form, wearing a nightshirt that dragged on the ground. He ran straight to her and grabbed her hand. "Mama, come see. Papa reading story." "Owen, you're supposed to be in bed." "Not sleepy." He tugged on her hand. "Come." Lila let herself be pulled into Julian's chambers. The Alpha King sat in a chair by the fire, a book open in his lap. He looked up when they entered, exasperation and fondness mixing on his face. "He insisted you needed to hear the story too," Julian explained. "Did he now?" Owen climbed into her lap as soon as she sat in the opposite chair, settling against her chest. "This one," he said, pointing at the book, "about wolves." Julian began reading, his voice low and steady. It was a children's tale about wolf pups learning to hunt, nothing sophisticated, but Owen was enraptured. Lila found herself relaxing into the chair, one arm around the boy, listening to Julian's voice wash over her. She was safe here. In this room, with these two people, she was safe. That's when Owen's head snapped up. His nose wrinkled, and he made a sound of distress. Before Lila could ask what was wrong, the boy launched himself out of her lap and ran back through the connecting door. "Owen?" Lila stood to follow him. He was in her chambers, staring at the wine glass she'd left on the table. As she watched, he shifted to pup form and knocked the glass over with his paw, sending wine spilling across the table and floor. "Owen, what are you doing?" The pup barked once, sharp and urgent. Then his nose went to the spilled wine and he backed away, hackles raised, growling. Julian appeared in the doorway. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. He just knocked over my wine and now he's growling at it." Julian's expression went very still. He crossed the room, knelt by the spill, and brought his face close to it. When he looked up, his eyes were hard. "This is poisoned." The words didn't make sense at first. Lila stared at the wine spreading across her floor. That's not possible. It was brought up fresh tonight. By who? One of the servants, Claire, but she would never. Not her. Whoever prepared it before it reached your room. Julian stood and moved to the door, yanking it open. The guards outside snapped to attention. Find Captain Tobias. Tell him someone tried to poison Lady Lila. I want every servant who touched this wine questioned. Now. The guards scattered. Julian turned back to find Owen had shifted to human form again and was clinging to Lila's skirts. The boy was shaking. Good boy, Julian said, his voice gentling as he addressed his son. You protected her. You're very brave. Bad smell, Owen said. Hurt Mama. Julian scooped the boy up. No one's going to hurt Mama, I promise. The investigation moved fast. Within an hour, Tobias had rounded up every servant involved in preparing or delivering food and drink to the high-status apartments. One by one, they were questioned. The wine had come from the central kitchens, poured by a servant no one recognized. Young man, brown hair, kept his head down. He'd arrived 2 days ago, claiming to be sent from a noble house to train in the castle kitchens. No one had verified his credentials. Not with the castle still reeling from the upheaval in the servants' wing. Positions shuffled, rosters rewritten, and the kitchens stretched thin by the coming ceremony. In the rush, a stranger with a borrowed letterhead had slipped through the cracks. Tobias found him trying to flee through the servants' entrance. The man fought, but he was no match for the captain of the guard. They dragged him to the dungeons, and Tobias went to work. Lila didn't witness the interrogation, but she heard about it later. The assassin broke quickly under questioning, pinned by inconsistencies, a torn seal on his false papers, and the simple fact that he'd been caught running for the gates. He'd been hired 3 weeks ago by Lady Severin. His job was simple: poison the Omega woman who'd gotten too close to the Alpha King. Make it look like natural causes. He'd been promised enough gold to disappear and live comfortably for the rest of his life. Julian was in a council meeting when Tobias brought him the confession. According to witnesses, the Alpha King went very quiet. Then he ordered an immediate investigation into all of Lady Severin's financial records and correspondence. What they found buried Severin completely. Records of payments to Ingrid 2 years ago, routed through intermediaries but traceable. Letters discussing the problem of Julian's first heir and the need to clear the path for a new succession. Notes about hiring the assassin, written in Severin's own hand. When guards came to arrest her, Severin tried to run. She made it to the stables before they caught her. She fought like a cornered animal, screaming that she'd done what was necessary, that Julian needed an alpha mate, that the kingdom needed strong heirs. Her trial was public and swift. Julian sat on his throne with Owen on one side and Lila on the other, his face carved from stone as evidence was presented. Severin tried to defend herself, claiming she'd acted out of love for the kingdom, that an Omega had no place as mother to the heir, that she'd only done what others were too coward to do. You murdered my wife's child, Julian said when she finished. His voice carried through the silent hall. You conspired to have my son killed as a newborn. You tried to murder the woman who saved him? And you dare to speak to me of love and courage? Severin's face twisted. Your wife was weak. She couldn't even survive childbirth. And that woman, she pointed at Lila, is nothing but a jumped-up servant playing at being noble. Julian stood. The movement was slow, controlled, but everyone in the hall felt the rage coming off him. Your sentence is as follows. You will be marked as a traitor, the brand burned into your wrist where everyone can see what you are. You will be exiled from Valdemir permanently, with orders sent to every pack in every territory that you are not to be given shelter or aid. You will spend the rest of your life alone, rejected by all our kind, until death claims you. That is my judgment. Severin screamed as guards dragged her away to the courtyard where the branding would occur. Her screams echoed through the castle long after she was gone. Ingrid's sentencing came next. She was brought from the dungeons, thinner than Lila remembered, her face haggard. But when she looked at Julian, there was something like peace in her expression. You cooperated with the investigation, Julian said. You showed genuine remorse for your actions. For that reason, I'm sparing your life. But you will be exiled from Valdmir and forbidden from practicing healing arts anywhere in the realm. You have 1 week to leave. Ingrid bowed her head. Thank you, Your Majesty. I accept my punishment. With both sentences passed, Julian dismissed the court, but he ordered his council to remain. When the hall had cleared of everyone but his closest advisors, he made his announcement. I have received multiple petitions regarding my marital status. Many of you have suggested candidates for queen. I'm here to tell you that I will not be considering any of them. Murmurs spread through the council. An elderly lord stood. Your Majesty, tradition requires... I know what tradition requires. Julian's voice cut through the protest. And as Alpha King, I have the authority to change tradition when it no longer serves the kingdom. My son has a mother, one he chose through bond and instinct. I will not replace her simply to satisfy convention. You speak of the Omega servant. This from another council member, her tone carefully neutral. Your Majesty, surely you see the difficulty. An Omega as queen would be unprecedented. So was a king's heir surviving death through ancient magic. Julian leaned forward. My son is alive because of Lila. The kingdom has an heir because she risked everything to save him. That matters more than bloodline or designation. The nobles will never accept it, someone said. Then the nobles can learn acceptance, or they can find themselves without political influence. Julian's eyes swept the council. I'm making this clear now. Anyone who challenges my decision challenges me directly. And I promise you, that will not end well. The threat hung in the air. Several council members exchanged glances, clearly calculating whether opposition was worth the risk. Julian had just exiled a high-born noble for treason. He'd proven he wasn't afraid to use his absolute authority. If the council cannot support my decision, Julian continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous, I will dissolve this council and rule by direct decree. The choice is yours. One by one, the council members bowed their heads in acquiescence. They might not like it, but they understood power when they saw it. Julian had drawn his line, and none of them wanted to be on the wrong side of it. When the council was dismissed, Julian found Lila waiting in the corridor outside. Owen was with her, holding her hand, his small face serious, as if he understood the weight of what had just happened. You heard? Julian asked. I heard. Lila's voice was steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. You just made a lot of enemies for me. I made enemies for us. He stepped closer. They'll learn to live with it, or they'll leave. Either way, I don't care. Julian, I mean it. He reached out, and this time he did touch her face, his fingers gentle against her cheek. I'm done pretending this hasn't been coming since the moment I found you with my son. I'm done acting like what I feel for you is gratitude or convenience. Lila's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. What do you feel? Everything. The word came out raw. Everything I thought I'd never feel again. Owen tugged on both their hands. Mama and Papa, he announced as if solving a problem. Together. Julian laughed, the sound surprised out of him. Yes, together. And there, in the stone corridor with guards pretending not to watch, the Alpha King of Valdmir bent his head and kissed the Omega woman who'd saved everything that mattered. The kiss in the corridor changed everything and nothing at once. Julian pulled back first, his hand still cupped against Lila's cheek. His eyes searched hers, looking for something she wasn't sure she knew how to give. I need to do this properly, he said. Not in a corridor with guards pretending they can't see us. Owen, still holding both their hands, made an impatient sound. Garden, he announced. Moon. Julian's mouth quirked. Out of the mouths of pups. That evening, after Owen had been fed and bathed and was fighting sleep despite obvious exhaustion, Julian came to Lila's chambers. He wore simpler clothes than usual, without any of the formal trappings of his position. Just a man, nervous in a way that made him seem younger. Walk with me, he said. The castle gardens in winter were stark but beautiful. Snow covered the ground in a blanket that muffled sound, and the moon hung fat and bright overhead. Guards followed at a discreet distance, close enough to protect but far enough to give the illusion of privacy. They walked in silence at first, their breath misting in the cold air. Lila pulled her cloak tighter, and Julian moved closer, his warmth a presence against her side. "I've been thinking about what to say," Julian began. Practiced different speeches, tried to find the right words, but everything I came up with felt wrong. Too formal, or too casual, or just not true. "So what did you decide?" "To tell you the truth simply." He stopped walking and turned to face her. The mate bond formed between us. "I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe that first night, when I saw you kneeling in my hall with terror on your face, but refusing to apologize for saving my son. Maybe later, during those long nights watching Owen sleep. But it's there now, and it's real." Lila's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. "I'm Omega. You're the Alpha King. Mate bonds don't form across such gaps in hierarchy." "They're not supposed to," Julian agreed, "but ours did anyway. I can feel you, Lila, when you're afraid or happy or exhausted. I can sense where you are in the castle without having to ask. And when I'm near you, everything in me settles in a way it hasn't since my wife died." "Julian, I know what I'm asking is impossible," he continued. "I know the council barely tolerates you now. Making you queen would cause an uproar that might not settle for years. Some nobles will leave rather than serve under an Omega. Others will plot and scheme, trying to undermine you at every turn." He reached for her hands, holding them between his. "But I'm asking anyway. Will you be my mate? My queen? Not because it's easy or convenient, but because neither of us has a choice anymore." Lila looked at their joined hands. His were so much larger than hers, scarred from years of combat and rough from work despite his position. They were also warm and steady and holding her like she was something precious. "I don't know how to be a queen," she whispered. "I barely know how to be anything other than a servant." "Then learn with me. We'll figure it out together." "What about Owen? He deserves better than a mother who—" "Owen chose you." Julian's voice was firm. "He called you Mama before he ever said Papa. He trusts you absolutely, loves you without reservation. What more could he possibly deserve? A mother of proper breeding. Someone who knows how to raise a prince. He needs someone who will love him the way you do. Everything else can be taught." Lila wanted to argue more, to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But before she could speak, she heard running footsteps behind them. Both turned to find Owen racing across the snowy garden in his nightshirt, bare feet leaving small prints. "Owen, what are you doing out here?" Lila's worry overrode everything else. "You'll freeze." The boy ran straight to them and grabbed both their hands, pulling them together with 2-year-old determination. "Together," he said, the word very clear. "Mama and Papa together." "Owen, you should be in bed," Julian started, but his son interrupted. "Moon," Owen said, pointing up. "Show Moon." As if the boy had given permission, he shifted. The transformation was smooth now, practiced. Within seconds, a small black pup stood in the snow where the child had been. He sat back on his haunches, lifted his small muzzle to the sky, and howled. The sound was thin and high, a pup's voice without the depth of an adult wolf. But it carried across the garden, over the castle walls, out into the winter night. And from the castle, from the barracks, from the village beyond the walls, other voices answered. Deep howls and high adult wolves and young ones, a chorus of response that built and built until the air itself seemed to vibrate with it. Lila felt the sound in her bones. This was Pack, she realized. Not the court, not the nobles in silk. The wolves, blood and instinct and territory, answering the voice of their prince. This was every wolf in Valdemir responding to their prince's call. But it was more than that. The howls weren't just acknowledgement, they were approval, agreement, acceptance. Julian's hand tightened on hers. "They know," he said softly. "The pack knows what we're claiming, and they're giving blessing." Owen shifted back to human form, completely unbothered by the cold or his nakedness. He beamed up at them both. "See? Everyone says yes." Julian laughed, the sound shocked out of him. He scooped Owen up despite the boy's lack of clothes. "You brilliant little troublemaker. Did you plan this?" "Mama sad," Owen said simply. "Fixed it." Lila couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. She reached out and pulled both of them close, Julian and Owen together, and let herself believe this might actually be real. "Is that a yes?" Julian asked against her hair. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." The ceremony was set for 3 days later, timed to the full moon. Tradition required mate bonds to be sealed under the moon's witness, with the pack present to acknowledge and accept. Those 3 days were chaos. Servants rushed to prepare the Great Hall. Nobles arrived from outlying territories, summoned by urgent messages. Lila was measured for formal clothes, taught protocols she'd never needed to know, and briefed on what would be expected of her. Through it all, she felt the undercurrent of hostility. Not from everyone, but from enough that it was impossible to ignore. Older nobles especially seemed to view her elevation as personal insult. She overheard more than one conversation about the degradation of proper hierarchy, the dangers of allowing Omegas above their station. The night before the ceremony, Lila stood in her apartments and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. The dress laid out for tomorrow was beautiful, deep blue silk embroidered with silver thread. She touched it and felt nothing but dread. A knock interrupted her spiral. Owen burst in without waiting for permission, followed more sedately by Julian. "Can't sleep," Owen announced, too excited. "You're supposed to be in bed," Lila said. But there was no heat in it. Julian met her eyes over Owen's head. He wasn't the only one having trouble sleeping. They ended up in front of the fire, Owen between them, the boy talking excitedly about the ceremony and how he got to wear fancy clothes and stand on the dais where everyone could see him. His enthusiasm was infectious, and gradually Lila felt some of her dread ease. When Owen finally fell asleep, sprawled across both their laps, Julian spoke quietly. "Having second thoughts?" "Third and fourth thoughts," Lila admitted. "I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong." "It probably will go wrong in ways we can't predict," Julian said. "But we'll handle it. Together." The word settled something in Lila's chest. Together. She wasn't facing this alone. The ceremony began at moonrise. The Great Hall had been transformed, the usual tables removed to create open space. Pack members filled the room. Hundreds of people gathered to witness their Alpha King take a mate. Lila stood at the back entrance, dressed in her blue silk, and tried to remember how to breathe. Owen held her hand, looking impossibly serious in his own formal clothes. "Ready, Mama?" he asked. She wasn't, but she nodded anyway. The doors opened. Every eye in the hall turned to watch them enter. Lila kept her gaze fixed on Julian, standing at the front of the room near the dais. He wore black with silver clasps, his hair bound back, and the expression on his face when he saw her made her knees weak. They walked forward together, Lila and Owen, through the silent crowd. Some faces were friendly. Most were carefully neutral. A few were openly hostile. But they all watched as she climbed the steps to stand before their king. Julian reached for her hands. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I hoped you would." He turned to address the crowd. "We gather under the moon's witness to seal the mate bond, to declare before pack and kingdom that Lila is my chosen mate, my queen, the mother of my heir." Murmurs spread through the hall. Several nobles in the front shifted uncomfortably. An elderly man stepped forward from the crowd. "Your Majesty, I must protest. This woman is Omega. She has no proper lineage, no training for the position you're placing her in. Tradition requires—" "I know what tradition requires," Julian interrupted. "I also know that tradition didn't save my son when he was dying. This woman did. She risked everything, asked for nothing in return, and gave Owen back his life. That matters more than bloodline. But the kingdom needs a queen who understands what it means to fight for those weaker than herself. One who knows what it's like to be overlooked and dismissed and treated as lesser. One who will rule with compassion as well as strength." Julian's voice carried through the hall. "If you can't accept that, you're welcome to leave." The challenge was clear. Several nobles exchanged glances. One woman actually turned and walked toward the exit, her spine rigid with fury. That's when Owen stepped forward. He moved to stand directly in front of Lila, his small body positioned protectively. When he spoke, his child's voice rang clear. "My mama," he announced to the crowd. "Nobody else, just her." The sight of the heir to Waldmere, barely 2 years old, defending his chosen mother with such absolute certainty, did something to the crowd. Lila saw expressions shift, hostility giving way to something that might have been respect. A child's love was simple and honest. You couldn't fake it or force it. Julian moved to stand beside them, his hand resting on Owen's shoulder. "My son has chosen his mother. I have chosen my mate. Anyone who challenges either choice challenges me directly." His eyes swept the crowd, lingering on the nobles who'd looked most resistant. "I am your Alpha King. I can change tradition. I can change laws. And I will, if that's what it takes to protect my family." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the crowd, a woman's voice called out, "Long live the Queen!" Others picked up the cry. Not everyone, but enough. Some voices were warm with loyalty, others sharp with calculation, a chorus born as much of law as of love, but the hall moved with it all the same. The sound built, spreading through the hall until even the most reluctant were forced to join or be marked by their silence. Julian turned back to Lila. "They accept you. Some of them do," she corrected. "The ones who don't will learn, or they'll leave." He pulled her close, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Are you ready for this? Because once I mark you, it's permanent. The bond can't be broken." Lila looked at Owen, watching them with complete trust. Looked at Julian, who was offering her everything despite the cost. Looked at the crowd, some hostile, some accepting, all watching to see what she'd do. "I'm ready." The marking ceremony was both simple and profound. Julian pulled aside the collar of her dress, exposing the junction of neck and shoulder. His eyes met hers once more, asking permission. She nodded. When his teeth sank into her skin, claiming her as his mate, the pain was sharp and bright. But beneath it was something else. A connection snapping into place, a bond forming that went deeper than blood or choice. She could feel him suddenly, feel his love and fear and desperate hope all tangled together. Julian pulled back, blood on his lips. "Mine," he said, the word both promise and declaration. "Yours," Lila agreed. The hall erupted in howls, human voices and wolf voices mixing together. Owen shifted to pup form and added his own high howl to the chaos. And Lila, newly marked as queen, stood beside her mate and let herself believe this might actually work. The celebration lasted deep into the night, but not everyone celebrated. 2 older nobles were caught later that evening conspiring in a private corridor, planning rebellion against the new queen. Julian had them arrested and exiled within the hour, their lands and titles stripped. After that, the remaining resistance quieted. It didn't disappear, but it went underground, and that was something Lila could work with. 6 months passed like water. The castle adapted to its Omega Queen slowly but surely. Lila proved herself capable despite her humble origins, making decisions about the household and castle management with efficiency that surprised even her. She also made changes, small ones at first. Better conditions for servants. Claire, the girl who'd warned her, was quietly reassigned to the steward's office after she testified about the wine. Safe from kitchens and corridors where poison could hide, and given a wage that finally matched her loyalty. Fairer distribution of food during the continuing winter. A voice for those who'd never had one before. Some nobles hated her for it. Others grudgingly respected her. Lila found she didn't much care either way. The morning sickness had been terrible in the beginning, but now, 6 months pregnant, she felt stronger than she had in years. She stood at the window of her chambers and watched Owen in the practice yard below, swinging a wooden sword with determination, if not skill. Arms wrapped around her from behind, Julian's hands settling protectively over her swollen belly. "He's getting better. He's getting more dangerous," Lila corrected. "Yesterday, he nearly took out the weapons master's knee." Julian's laugh rumbled through his chest into her back. "He has enthusiasm. Technique will come later." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their son play. Movement caught Lila's eye near the castle entrance. Margot, carrying a bucket and scrub brush, heading toward the latrines. When she spotted Lila in the window, she stopped, bowed her head respectfully, then continued on. "Do you ever regret it?" Julian asked softly. "Accepting this life? You could have walked away." "To what? Back to the kitchens?" Lila turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. A family, a purpose, a place where I matter. You always mattered." "No, I was invisible." She put her hand over his heart. "You made me real." Julian kissed her, slow and sweet, his hands gentle on her body. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "The kingdom is prospering. Trade agreements are solid. The northern territories are stable. Owen is healthy and growing stronger every day, and in 3 months, we'll have a second child." He rested his forehead against hers. "Everything I have, everything I am, started with you stealing food to save a dying pup. How is that fair?" "It's not." Lila smiled. "But I'm not giving it back." Below them, Owen shouted in triumph as he successfully completed a practice form. He looked up, spotted them in the window, and waved enthusiastically with his wooden sword. They waved back. This was her life now. Not the one she'd been born to, but the one she'd earned through compassion and courage and refusing to let a small creature die alone. She was queen, mother, mate, all the things she'd never imagined she could be. And it had started with a simple choice in a dark cellar: to save someone who needed saving, to be brave when it would have been easier to walk away, to love without reservation or fear. Lila had learned that strength came in many forms. Sometimes it looked like an alpha king on his throne. Sometimes it looked like a child defending his mother. And sometimes it looked like a young Omega woman risking everything for a pup she didn't know, because her heart wouldn't let her do anything else. That, Lila thought, as Julian pulled her closer and Owen's laughter drifted up from the yard below, was the kind of strength that changed kingdoms.